disappeared in that unfinished building. While working in authorities, a lot of complaints and statements were received from this district. In most cases, children disappeared there, whose parents did not bother to punish them so that they did not climb everywhere. Moreover, in a long-abandoned facility, which could collapse at any second and could take away several little lives. There were also cases when young people disappeared, mostly drug addicts, teenagers who, being afraid of cops, tried to hide within the walls of this unfinished building in order to inject more shit into their bodies. These are perhaps all categories of people who disappeared in that place. Oh yeah, how could I forget about the homeless? They also disappeared without a trace, but no one ever remembered them. Nevertheless, these are people, after all. They are the same as adolescents and children. The same flesh, the same blood. Merely the mindset is different, and that's probably all. Now then, it was the simplest district of a provincial town. The local authorities, represented by the mayor and his suckers, tried to build a large shopping mall there, but as my cousin from Ukraine used to say, man proposes, God disposes. They began to build it, but they haven't finished. For what reason, I don't know. They might have stolen little money. So this concrete skeleton of the building keeps standing on the outskirts of our small town. No one even remembered about it until the local alky from the neighboring yard next to the unfinished building disappeared there as well. As if it was yesterday. I remember a woman crying in tears called into the police station. She couldn't really explain anything. She said that her husband had disappeared. Nobody could really explain where, how, and under what circumstances it had happened. But as it turned out later that the man came home drunk, they started arguing and she kicked him out the door. So he left, and then he just never returned home. The neighbors only said that they saw him walking towards the unfinished building. It was raining heavily. Well, who of the neighbors is going to let a drunken, smelly old man stay overnight? Of course, nobody. So he went there. At least there was a roof over his head. Well, since then no one has seen him again. And a day later our investigator got a missing persons report. I was already a criminal investigator at that time. So my colleague and I were sent to the place to figure out what happened in that unfinished building. Well, what can I say? We walked around the building probably 3 times. Searched everything backwards and forwards, but didn't find anything. There was not a single lead. What if he had disappeared in another place, not here? That's what I was thinking about while wandering around the empty flights of stairs. We interviewed the residents of the house where the man had dwelled, and they were claiming that the man had disappeared exactly in that building. They saw him enter there, but they didn't see him go out. Well, he might have decided to leave through another exit and say goodbye to his wife once and for all. But still, both his wife and the neighbors were claiming that they were constantly arguing. He was constantly drinking like hell. However, they kept living together and even didn't think of breaking up, moreover at their age. So the case was closed and the man was declared missing. It was closed not due to someone's laziness to conduct the investigation, but due to the lack of any lead, as if the earth had swallowed him. Then, other incidents followed. First, a boy, 9 years old, went missing. He was playing with other kids. Then he wanted to pee, but couldn't go home because the parents wouldn't let him go out again. So he wandered into that abandoned place and didn't return. So the story repeated again. In the afternoon, when there were enough people around, and besides, it was the middle of spring, it was just impossible not to notice this little boy coming out of the unfinished building. Dash cams on the cars parked nearby, as well as the security cameras at several shops that could cover most of the building, caught nothing. As I said before, the story seems to be completely the same. The building was dug inside and out, and still not a single clue. Dogs that could smell drugs for a kilometer didn't manage to find anything here either. The next incident didn't take long to wait. 3 people already went missing. These were teenagers. They were from another Soviet, Khrushchevka, which was located nearby as well. So we handed off to an already familiar area. The same fruitless searches. People disappeared without a trace, and even I had no guesses what was happening there and who was behind it. And after that incident, the relatives and friends of the missing started to strive for the demolition of that evil, unfinished building. But the maximum that they achieved, it was a low wooden fence with barbed wire, boarded up windows and doors, and a small booth with a watchman who was an old man and who came there only at night, lay down and fell asleep. That's all. Honestly, I was barely interested in those unknown disappearances. Well, one person went missing, then two. But excuse me, when consistently every 2 weeks people call and say their son, daughter, husband, brother, whoever, did not return home, then it sparks quite bad thoughts. After the building was fenced off, the losses stopped for a while. I got new cases happening and didn't have time to think of others, so I quit thinking of those stories, probably for a month. But again, I said, the disappearances stopped for a while, for a reason, because a month later they started up again, and it all started with the watchman who worked in that booth. Nobody knew the details of his disappearance, since at night he was completely alone there, but having already interviewed probably 5 residents of the house, already in the morning the next day we got some interesting information. We went to the apartment of some guy. He was a student who rented an apartment here, and he looked like a nerd. So we came in and he was looking at us with the eyes full of terror. Well, we calmed him down, showed the documents, and started the inquiry. So according to this guy,
Yesterday, I saw a light in this abandoned house, the light of a flashlight. Someone was walking there and examining everything. It might have been a watchman, an old man. He was not so tall. He was walking on the second floor.
How could you see him? It's far enough from here.
my colleague has asked.
So I have a telescope on my balcony. I like watching the stars. Well, let's face it, and people too. Their behavior and so on.
You must spy on chicks. We all know these little things.
Smiling, my colleague said.
Well, what happened next?
Well, I saw someone walking with a flashlight, so I kept watching. There was a hallway on the second floor and the old man stopped there. And then he must have seen someone because he started moving back. Then someone pulled him into the room and the flashlight went out. How did it pull him? Who? I didn't manage to see.
Maybe he came in there himself?
Well, am I dumb or what? I can discern when a person comes into a room himself and when he's pulled into it by someone else.
Well, will you be able to show this room?
Sure. Just a second. I'll get dressed.
My colleague and I went out. Then this guy followed us too. And in a couple of minutes we were inside the building where, according to this guy, someone dragged the watchman. Well, anything could happen, so we took out our guns, and I told this boy to follow us. We went up to the second floor, carefully examining the building along the way.
He was standing right opposite this room.
Are you sure?
Yeah, right here.
Hey, listen, are you kidding us?
No way. I definitely saw it.
He said with a trembling voice. And it was clear from him that he wasn't lying.
What's your name then?
I'm Dennis.
Okay, Dennis. Watch this building today. Write down my phone number. If you see anything, call me anytime.
All right.
Let's go, I said to my colleague.
Listen, it's quite a strange case. So many people have already disappeared without a trace. Do you think the kid didn't lie?
Why should he lie? What the hell? Alright, never mind. We spent the rest of the day at the station, and I couldn't stop thinking of this building. There were a lot of questions, but there were no answers to them. And this fact bugged me. Damn. Every case always has at least some evidence or some clue. But here, there is nothing at all. Either someone works really well, or it is really some kind of devilry. Time went on. The clock was ticking on my desk until it started to get darker outside. And when everyone was already going home, I suddenly got an idea to go to that place and stay overnight there. I'll sit in the car. I'll take a walk. Maybe someone will decide to take me. Honestly, I haven't done that before. I mean, instead of sleeping in a warm bed, I went to catch criminals. But it's a really strange case. And until I figure it out, I won't fucking sleep. I drove into the yard. This concrete monster was already looking at me around the corner of the house, as if telling me, "Come on. Come here. I'm waiting for you." But firstly, I got out of the car, glanced at the window of that boy, The light was off. He should be hiding. So I stood for a minute and decided to look in on him. Maybe he could tell something. A much more strange picture was waiting for me. First, the door was ajar. Well, here, of course, God himself ordered me to come in. I went in, started looking around, and understood that nobody was at home. It was so dark that I couldn't even see my hand in front of me. So, I went into his room. The telescope was in the room. The apartment was pretty neat. I turned on the light in the hallway, and there was a detail that stood out. There were some red spots on the door. It wasn't blood, but something similar to the bits of meat that stuck to the door. All right, but where's the kid? The door was open. Come in and take whatever you want. And as soon as I thought about leaving this place, I heard the vibration of the phone. From the room where the telescope was. Well, I took a phone. There was a missed call from an unknown number. Well, I know it's not allowed to do that, but nevertheless, I opened his photos, and the last photo surprised me a lot. I'd even say it tensed me up. The thing that was in the photo there was a door to his room. Exactly to this room. But something like a human jaw with huge, jagged, creepy teeth was depicted on the whole door. The photo was taken literally an hour and a half ago. What the hell is that? It didn't look like a Photoshop or something like that. It was the real photo. An extremely strange and creepy photo. So I kept staying in the room, snooping through his phone. I opened the text messages. Last SMS wasn't sent, and there was my phone number. And the following thing was written.
It found out that I was watching it and came for me. Come faster, it's already here.
I realized that I got goosebumps while reading this. I didn't understand anything. And then something so creepy started to happen that completely turned my worldview upside down and made me believe in everything that was possible and wasn't. I started examining this guy's telescope. Well, and I decided to see what it's like. I've never looked through it before. So it was already directed towards that unfinished building. So I saw something wandering there. I instantly left the apartment and took out the gun, fled out of the entrance and set off to the abandoned building. I jumped over the fence, snuck inside, then I heard a cry. The cry was so heartbreaking that I can't even describe it. It was a girl who was screaming, and after the scream there was some kind of incomprehensible chomping, and the scream gradually began to fade. I quickly ran up to the second floor, where the scream was coming from them. But as soon as I ran there, I regretted that I got involved in it and took this case. In one of the passages to the room, there were the same teeth as in the photo on Dennis's phone. I got startled when I saw what they were doing. They were simply grinding a girl who was about 18 to 19 years old. They were really chewing fast. Blood and guts were dripping down those huge teeth. The girl was already dead. She was clamped in these teeth so that her head and arms and body were sticking out into the hallway, and the legs and pelvis were in the room. And in a few seconds, the body just fell apart into two parts. The body with the head and arms fell off and fell down the concrete floor, covering everything around with red liquid. I was just standing, just stupefied by the nightmare I saw. And these teeth were moving and making nasty chomping sounds. It was something alive. What I was feeling at the moment, it's impossible to convey in words. I just couldn't believe it, at all. I started to run away from this place as far as possible. It was very dark. I couldn't see anything. But my phone fell out of my pocket when I was running and following the girl's cry. And my fatal mistake was that I turned somewhat a little earlier and didn't get to the flight of stairs, but to the storeroom or something. Well, the room was small, but before I could turn around, these teeth were already in the doorway which I had just run in. I fell on my ass and squeezed into a corner. And this is what happens next. There were only the walls around me, strong, concrete walls, but there were no windows. The only way out was the door. But there was this fucking creature at the door. What should I do now? How can I get out of here? I didn't want to end up as that girl did. And these teeth were moving, then opening and closing. making subtle squeaks and chomping. These sounds seemed to pierce my head through the ears. My heart was just going to burst out of my chest. My breathing sped up. I had a lump in my throat. I found myself in complete despair. I cocked the gun and started to shoot at these damn teeth. Some pieces started to fly off these teeth and they even opened a little. I tried to jump out into the hallway as hard as I could. Well, I managed to jump out. But these teeth like a bear trap caught my hand, leaving me without the 3 fingers on my right hand. Extreme pain pierced my body. I started yelling, not that loud as the girl did, but still quite loud. And yet I rushed to the exit from this unfinished building. Damn it. I decided to end my career as a police officer. My psyche had been hurt. I started to get terrified of doors. Any doors. Either the entrance door to my apartment or the door to the supermarket. All the time. It seems to me that if I look away, this chomping jaw creaking with its yellow, jagged teeth will show up again.